We are going to start with President Trump. He's heading to Vietnam to meet with North Korea's Kim Jong Un. Before he left the U.S. yesterday, the president scaled back expectations. President Trump said that he is not in a rush to get North Korea to give up its nuclear weapons, as long as there are no tests. Kim is already in Vietnam. He arrived several hours ago after a 2.5-day train ride through China. Stephen Portnoy has more from Hanoi on what both leaders are hoping to get out of this summit.
After a 60-hour train ride from North Korea through China, Kim Jong Un arrived in Vietnam ahead of his second summit with President Trump. Surrounded by his security detail, the North Korean leader rolled through the streets en route to Hanoi as crowds of onlookers waved North Korean and Vietnamese flags.
I think we'll have a very tremendous summit.
Before leaving Washington, President Trump laid out the goals for both countries.
We want denuclearization, and I think he'll have a country that will set a lot of records for speed in terms of an economy.
This week's summit comes just 8 months after the two met in Singapore, where the end result was a vague commitment from Kim to work towards denuclearization of the Korean peninsula.
The worst-case scenario is the world living with a nuclear-armed North Korea forever.
Do-yeon Kim is a CBS News contributor and a nuclear and Korea expert with the Center for a New American Security.
What's the best hope for the United States here in Hanoi?
A clear sign that North Korea, that Kim Jong Un is willing to embark on a path towards complete denuclearization. What Kim Jong Un will be looking out for is what will he get in return for whatever baby step he might want to take on denuclearization.
Kim Jong Un's arrival here in Hanoi upended American journalists. His small motorcade pulled up to the same hotel where White House correspondents had been staying. It seems the place had been double booked. Though the arrangements for the press were made weeks ago, the U.S. TV crews were ordered to pack up their things and relocate just before the leader arrived. Anne-Marie?
All right, Stephen, thank you. CBS News State Department reporter Christina Ruffini joins us now from Hanoi. As I understand it, are you temporarily homeless? I've heard that Kim Jong Un arrived and caused a little bit of chaos, and a lot of the American press had to be relocated to another hotel.
It was quite the scene. So just for some context, no matter where the president goes, there's always a press filing center set up. And that's so, the White House press corps, who follows him all over the world, can watch the satellite feeds, get on TV, and be able to report back home. This has been standard practice for administrations. The White House usually designates the hotel, and the press corps builds it out and covers the cost. And this has been weeks in the making. I mean, gear has been shipped from America. They've been building out this location. There was a podium for press conferences. There was this whole room set up. And then all of a sudden, right about the time that Kim Jong Un got to the Vietnamese border, there were notes that went out that said there's a technical problem and the White House press file needed to be moved. Turns out the technical problem was that Kim Jong Un didn't want to share his hotel with some of the most aggressive reporters on the planet. Being a dictator with almost no free media, he probably didn't want the extra scrutiny. So the reporters haven't been kicked out of their hotel rooms, that are reporters who were staying there, but the press file was moved. It had to get packed up. Everything had to be moved to a community center about a half a mile away. And reporters, it sounded like total chaos. Our colleagues who were over there, Grace Atkinson, who's a producer for CBS This Morning, said at one point they turned off the elevators and they were stuck on the 7th floor, so they tried to go out down a stairwell, and they got corralled into some sort of restaurant, and there were like big curtains put up, and they were told not to take pictures of the leader as he entered. Phones were swatted down. One producer from another network tried to take photos, and it was like taken away from her. Then there was a fight over whether or not she could have the phone. All right, long story short, why does this matter? Because, no one likes to hear the press be narcissistic and talk about ourselves. However, it's indicative of how last minute this summit is, that no one thought to check whether or not the leader of North Korea would be willing to stay at the hotel with the White House press corps until Kim Jong Un was in the country.
Wow, that is very telling. So we know that he has arrived ahead of President Trump. What guidance are we getting on the actual schedule for this summit?
It's still a little fuzzy. We haven't seen a lot of details for Thursday, which is where we're expecting most of this to be hashed out. But we have heard that President Trump, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and acting White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney will have a dinner and a meeting tomorrow night. So that'll kind of be the overture and the opening into whatever they want to try to hash out on Thursday. And we actually still haven't been told the location for any of these meetings, including the actual summit. One thing I can say is it probably won't be at the Malia Hotel because Kim does not like to share.
Yes, to say the least. So we know that the ultimate goal for both the last summit and this one was to have a nuclear-free North Korea. But you remember in sort of the 4-point document that they managed to hammer out in Singapore, the idea of denuclearization and what it actually meant. There was much debate about what it meant for President Trump versus what it meant for Kim Jong Un. So here we are again negotiating towards this final framework that presumably would have North Korea give up their nuclear plans. But do we have any idea just what North Korea would want, what they're willing to give up in order to get this to happen?
So North Korea wants sanctions relief, and they need sanctions relief. Kim Jong Un, unlike his father, is a much younger leader. He potentially could have a much longer reign or career or whatever you want to call it. But in order for him to do that, his current model is not sustainable, right? His people are starving, and no matter how repressive your regime is, at some point there's going to be backlash, and you risk losing your hold on power. So what he wants is access to the international markets, foreign investment. He wants North Korea to look like Hanoi. He wants these foreign companies to come in and kind of help him revive his economy. Now, the question is, what is he going to be willing to give up to do that? Obviously, we're still on this stumbling block of what exactly the definition of denuclearization is, right? What it is as the joke is on the Hill. But the Americans have now kind of backed off. Well, President Trump specifically has possibly backed off full denuclearization, saying, well, as long as we keep the status quo and they don't do any testing, I'm okay with that. And that might be an opening for the North Koreans. At least they might be saying, well, hey, we can get foreign investment and not have to give up this nuclear program, because Kim has made promises to his people. He's said things like, you're going to be able to eat meat and live a healthy life. And he's not going to be able to do that and keep those promises unless the economy opens up and he finds some way to convince the community of nations that he's a good investment and they should drop sanctions.
All right, Christina, I look forward to talking to you throughout this summit. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Anne-Marie.